What
Yes.
happens. All right. Meanwhile, a moment ago you used the word astonishing. Republicans on Capitol Hill yesterday demanded of the FBI answers to the astonishing agreement between the Department of Justice and two of Hillary Clinton's aides where give us your laptop, you get limited immunity, and we'll bust them afterwards. The Republicans on Capitol Hill are apoplectic because it's like, hey, there was stuff on those laptops we congressional investigators could have used.
This is a new low for the FBI, and it's a head-scratcher as to how this came about. The government simply does not destroy evidence that it has acquired in a case in which there is a prosecution, no prosecution. When there is a prosecution, they keep the evidence presented to the jury and then either retain it or give it back to its source afterwards. When there's no prosecution, they either keep it until the statute of limitations has run, here 5 years, or they give it back. But to destroy it, knowing that another entity, the House of Representatives, has subpoenaed it, also a federal judge had ordered it produced in the Freedom of Information Act cases, is an example of the government breaking its own laws.
It's fishy.
The FBI, the Justice Department would prosecute any one of us and anyone watching now who knowingly destroyed evidence that the government had subpoenaed.
So when people said the FBI was doing this deal, they were bystanders in this, correct?
These decisions, that's a great question. These decisions were made by the Justice Department, which used the FBI to further the president's political goals.
The word early in this segment was astonishing. Can we use the term abruptly now? The Department of Justice abruptly dropped the case against a Libyan arms dealer who evidently was the go-between to get arms to the Libyan rebels, somehow were ferrying up to Syria. Can you unwind this for us?
Yes, this is another case in which the Department of Justice is carrying water for Mrs. Clinton. She's the Secretary of State. She orchestrates this effort to topple Gaddafi, which ultimately is successful in toppling him, but disastrous for Libya, and our own ambassador gets assassinated. One of the means she used was to use her power as Secretary of State to exempt certain arms dealers from the UN embargo. Bottom line, American arms dealers are now, under Mrs. Clinton, shipping heavy military-grade arms to rebel groups in Libya, supposedly to topple Gaddafi. The CIA is saying, wait a minute, Mrs. Clinton, some of these rebel groups are not really rebel groups. They're terrorist organizations that are going to use the arms against us. One of those arms dealers, who never shipped a single weapon to these creeps, was indicted by the Justice Department for attempting to do it. His defense was, Mrs. Clinton authorized it. Mrs. Clinton knew what was going on. Mrs. Clinton was involved in supplying arms to terrorist organizations. 2 weeks before the trial, dropped the case. Because they didn't want this defense to play out in the public courtroom.
And by the way, a lot of those arms end up in Syrian rebels, a lot of terrorist organizations.
Some of those arms are being used against us today.
Oh. That's astonishing.
It is astonishing.
All right. But I still go with the word abrupt.
Abrupt.
Very good.
Abrupt.
Take some grammar course recently?
Yeah, absolutely. I got an SATs coming up at the end of the month. Thanks a lot, Ted. Hope to get into a college.
I'll write you a letter of recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.